Hey everybody, Rhino here, and today we're going to look back in on some of the Mizkif Emiru bullshit that's going on. This handsome, degenerate, inbred fella here is Mizkif, and if you don't know, he is the more bad actor in a bad actor relationship. Emiru is by no means without fault in this, but it's just one of those scenarios where he is by far the greater of two evils. So this is a video from Sensitive Society, and we're going to see what he has to say on the subject. Let's go.
It's been a very interesting month for Mizkif. In case you guys don't know, I talked about this. Mizkif was trying to frame asmongold as a racist by saying that the N-word was his password. Then Emiru responded to the leaks, and I literally just noticed this. So if you're a YouTuber, you have the YouTuber creator app thingy, and you get notified when verified people comment. But I just noticed that Mizkif left a comment under one of my videos. Mizkif, if you're watching this, hello.
Okay, so instead of letting him keep going, one, if that is asmongold's password, which it wasn't, I seen those messages, he was, from my understanding, setting up a way to prevent workarounds. You've all seen this. You could use 1G, you could use 3Gs, you could use an I in there. Basically, new and creative ways, leet speak, throwing the one in there. That's all. He was just trying to find new ways to stop people from going around it. I don't think you should bother personally, but, you know, of course, now he's going to claim that that was his actual password, and if it was, strong password.
I'm a fan. Can we please collab? Wanna go get Boba with me and Hassan? Been a very bad month for Mizkif. He made his weird video talking about Emiru and the lawsuit and how she's lying. Some stuff ain't adding up. It's a very messy situation.
So, to give credit where it's due, it is a messy situation, but he's not making it better by not having a lawyer, and you know that he doesn't have a good lawyer because any lawyer worth their salt would have been like, you need to sit down, shut up, and let me handle this. But instead, he's going out and putting out these vague posts like, yeah, that'll show him. Meanwhile, she's about to take him to the bank. Now, there's always the argument of, if this was really that bad, why isn't this being handled in criminal court? And that's a perfectly valid argument. She should have pressed charges of some kind if this is true, you know, hashtag if, because we don't know anything for sure. But a lot of times in these kinds of cases, it's really hard to prove anyone did anything. So criminal charges usually aren't the best option for either side. It is much easier to prove your case in civil court. Now, having a criminal conviction will help you in civil court, but it's by no means required.
Of allegations going around back and forth, and if you guys remember, asmongold was getting sued as well. That is why he couldn't talk about the N-word situation until a few days ago. Mizkif just got destroyed. He got his cheeks slapped in 4K in front of the judge because he lost. He lost his lawsuit with asmongold.
He's the guy.
He lost the lawsuit. This is, of course, a civil. There's nothing criminal, as far as I'm aware, between him and asmongold. Now, it's really hard for me to keep up with this because of all the drama stuff going on, as well as my other channels and whatnot. As far as I'm aware, the judge threw out his entire case. Like, he just didn't have a leg to stand on. And, I mean, does that look like the face of a trustworthy person? Absolutely not.
Who has brought this claim against the plethora of people that he thinks have wronged him. Now, of course, amongst those, of course, the prime defendant here is Emiru, who is not off the hook. But even with Emiru, her chances of winning seem to be going up based on the latest filing and what happened. And of course, we have the Roach King over here in his glorious rainbow shirt. He was a defendant in this case, but now things have changed in his favor. What went down?
This is also interesting before he keeps talking. What may end up happening is because he won his case, he is now free and clear, he will very likely be a supporting witness for Emiru at this point. It was in Mizkif's best interest that he had tied him up legally and locked him down and also proven him as a bad actor, because Asmon has seen and been a witness, and is especially as a character witness, he has locked in against Mizkif as the bad guy, and now Emiru can pull him in to the case as a character witness and as a active witness, depending on what events he was and wasn't there for. Remember, you still can't lie in court, but now she has this person who was previously tied up that she can bring in and say, this happened, and Asmon can go, yes it did, I was there. This happened, yes it did, I was there. As well as any other witnesses, which I'm sure there are some.
On this latest ruling from the judge in this case, well, let's look at the exact text here, and this is fascinating. So they go on to say, the judge says, plaintiff, that's Mizkif, claims that the word involving in an SA dispute definition is so broad as to make the EFAA's treatment of SH and SA entirely different. So he's trying to break those things out for his own benefit to make his case. However, both definitions contain broad language involving.
Before he gets going too far, let's actually stop and look. Plaintiffs claim that the word involving, that's an interesting thing to pick the fight with, is involving in the sexual assault dispute definition is so broad as to make EFAA's treatment of blank harassment and, sexual harassment and sexual assault, I don't know why they're lying, the dude's a lawyer, entirely different. Well, I don't even necessarily know if that's true, because harassment and assault would have two different underlying requirements, right? Harassment can be a part of assault, but assault is not necessarily a part of harassment. You do not have to physically attack somebody to harass them, but you generally would be harassing someone leading up to an assault. Assault is just a more extreme form of harassment, but your state may vary, your mileage may vary. Talk to a lawyer, talk to this guy down here, this handsome fella. Both definitions contain broad language involving and related to, but neither sweeps so broadly as to mean that the person alleging conduct constituting, we'll let him keep going,
related to, but neither sweeps so broadly as to mean the person alleging conduct constituting an SH dispute or SA dispute, i.e. the person who may elect to avoid arbitration is in fact the person accused of or denying either SA or SH. Now,
okay, let's back that up just a smidgen and really take a look at that. Both definitions contain broad language involving and related to, basically being about the things in which it's speaking, but neither sweeps so broadly as to mean that the person alleging conduct constituting that, so referring to the victim constituting a harassment dispute or a assault dispute, i.e. the person who may elect to avoid arbitration being the victim. The victim chooses arbitration or not. They have the option of sitting down and negotiating over it because this is a civil case, is in fact the person accused of and denying either. So this is not up for Mizkif's choice. The victim is the intended person who would have the option of arbitration. Basically, if Emiru wanted to, she could say, okay, let's sit down at the table, we'll talk about this, and we will discuss what steps would have to be taken for me to drop this suit. Because it is a lawsuit, not criminal charges.
Person accused of or denying either SA or SH. Now, this is huge. What this is saying is that the perpetrator, right, the person who is being accused of perpetrating, the person who is not the victim here, but the person who is alleged, right? There's an allegation here out there that person can use it to their benefit. The law was constructed to help the victim, not the perpetrator, but the construction that Mizkif wants, he wants this arbitration prevent.
Well, yeah, the perpetrator would still be allowed to ask for arbitration and to petition the judge for it, but I'm going to give him a little bit of pushback, and it's not necessarily this guy. It is Mizkif's doing, not this gentleman's. The idea that the person being charged or alleged in this case would be the one to ask for the arbitration is a very broad interpretation of that language, and it is extremely broad, and I do not think a judge is going to go for that. I mean, he can try. You can try anything you want in court. You could do a backflip, but I just do not see that going the way he thinks it will.
To work for him as a person who was, once again, allegedly by Emiru in her quote-unquote emotional truth, the perpetrator.
Now, let me just say this. I'm not a lawyer, and the reason why I always say that is because then people are like, you are wrong. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not a lawyer. I've never...
Agreed. Same here. Not a lawyer. A retard on the internet. Just a retard on the internet using common sense and, 8th grade reading level.
In a million years claim to be an expert. I'm not a lawyer. I don't wear a suit, all right? I'm not wearing a suit as I'm making this video, so I'm not a real lawyer. Because then people are like, well, you said they were going to lose. And I'm like, well, I'm just reacting to legal mindset, and I said that I'm not an expert. It could go either way. I don't know the law. Yes, it is true that I wanted to go to law school before I went into another career, but I very seriously considered becoming a lawyer. So in another universe, Sense is a lawyer, and I am talking about streamers, a lawyer in another universe, guys. But we're not here to talk about my future. We're here to talk about the situation with Emeru and Mizkif, which I stand by with what I said about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, when the Emeru leaks and the asmongold leaks were going on. I think these two people are legitimately in middle school. They have middle school mentality. They're extremely toxic, and they need to grow.
Yes, he's making up a very good point here. These two people are quite immature in how they're handling this. It's very back and forth. It's very he said, she said. Now, one person is definitely handling it worse than the other. Mizkif, in his extremity, bringing in demon time. Yeah, he's basically styling him on himself. Emiru, it is in her best interest to adopt the Nuxanor tactic of do nothing and win, because that's all she has to do. She has the court of public opinion in her side, and he is so flamboyant and over the top and self-referential and hating at the same time, so he's talking about himself in a really hateful way and basically manufacturing this drama that is really just nothing burgers for his demon time and, exposing the truth. But he hasn't exposed anything. He's just made himself look bad. So all she has to do is sit back, be quiet, say nothing, and win. The lawyers will do the rest for her.
Grow the fuck up. I think they were both extremely toxic for each other. And if you ask me, do I feel bad that he lost his lawsuit? No, not really. I mean, the credibility for the Emeru lawsuit was stronger than the asmongold. I don't think suing asmongold was a good move. Bro just talked about the situation. Don't watch asmongold every single day. I don't watch any live streamers, so I don't know. Maybe he did something out of pocket, but as far as I know, he really didn't deserve to get sued. I thought that was pretty pity of me.
So I don't think that it was for nothing. What I actually think it was an attempt to make Asmongold look like he was a bigger part in it than he was, so that way he could defame Asmongold and make him also look like a bad actor, so he can then not further use the court of public opinion to continue making him look bad. Because, let's be honest, Asmongold took the Nux doctrine. It was known there was a lawsuit. It was known Mizkif and him were a part of it. But Asmongold sat back, he shut up, he did nothing, and he won. Nux doctrine wins every time.
Mizkif to do. Well, it didn't really go his way.
They go out to say that we're going to reject that argument and take up the recommendation of the magistrate judge Susan Hightower, who gave her recommendations earlier this month. So if you look into this, it says that they adopt the recommendations. So it's ordered that OTK, Mythic, King, their motion to compel arbitration is granted. So they win. So Mythic, OTK, and King, they're getting what they want, which is arbitration. So they're taking a win there. Next, it says litigation of counts 1 and 3 of their complaint is stayed. So that's the counts that related to OTK, Mythic, King.
When they say stayed, they mean that it is basically paused until after the arbitration, because a deal may be struck, a negotiation, they may haggle and say, okay, you want this thing, we will give you this, but you are going to drop this. So all they're saying is that we're just going to put a pin in that until all the haggling is done.
So those are stayed pending the arbitration. So now it's got to go to arbitration as to OTK, Mythic, and King, because once again, Mizkif can't use this to get out of arbitration. It also says, and here's the catch, that defendant Shunk, that's Emeru's motion to dismiss, is denied. So Emeru does take an L here, and Mizkif does get a tiny W, but there's a but, and you've always got to read the but. But plaintiff Miss Riendo, that's Mizkif, shall submit a more definite statement on or before August 10th. So we're going to have, in just a week or two, or 2 weeks, Raul, at this point, we're going to have him coming forward with this, identifying each statement that Emeru said, which alleges to be defamatory. So he's going to have...
So this is just a stay of execution for Mizkif, because it's not that the motion to dismiss was denied in its entirety, the judge said there isn't enough evidence for me to say either way. So again, we're going to put a pin on that. It's denied right now. They're giving Mizkif a little bit of time to identify each statement by Emiru, Miss Shunk, didn't know that was her name, or Miss Rendio, whichever one, that is defamatory, along with the exact quotes. They need this because if he's going to have any cult like Snowflake's chance in hell, he has to be very specific in what was said and why it was defamatory. Libel and slander are extremely hard to prove in court. There is an extremely high burden of proof for these things because you have to prove not only that they said it, but the intent was to cause you harm and financial harm specifically. So they're giving him an opportunity to gather all of that evidence as a whole. Now, he only has to prove one thing, but the more he can prove, the better off it is for his case. But I think he's going to struggle in that department because he also has to prove that she did it maliciously.
To go and pick out every single specific statement, including exact quotes from her live stream. So before, Mizkif was being vague, saying that, oh, I've been defamed, etc., but he wasn't saying this exactly is the thing. And the judge is agreeing with what we actually said previously on this stream, what others have said, what Aspen said as well, which is what exactly did these people say, Aspen, Emiru, etc., what did they say that is defamatory? Now, Aspen, as we're going to see, is out of this, but even as to Emiru, the judge needs more than what Mizkif has given so far.
Yep.
Well, I mean, that obviously makes sense. Legal mindset's 100% correct, because you can't bring down a verdict, or at least you shouldn't. A lot of modern judges, they shit the bed all the time by doing this. But you can't bring down a verdict on generalities. You have to have something concrete to go off of. Otherwise, you're really just harming without evidence. So they're giving him time to make a full case, to actually plead a locked-in solid case. But he still has to meet that high burden of proof for slander and libel, and specifically to prove damages. Because I can call you any name in the woods, but it doesn't matter as long as I didn't actually damage you. It hurt my feelings is not a high enough legal bar to give damages. There has to be some kind of provable damage to reputation, income, that sort of thing. Which, to be fair, Mizkif could argue the reputation and income part of it, because, frankly, I can't imagine his sponsors and his streams are doing very well right now. The sponsors are probably gone. His streams probably look like ghost towns, except for people hopping in chat to clown on him, which was always kind of a thing anyway. The dude's a fucking joke. I mean, it just perfectly makes sense that would be his case. Like, Your Honor, I'm sorry, but look at what I used to be and what I am now. They made me a lolcow. His actual best argument is that he is a lolcow now, and he's not to be taken seriously, which he isn't. But he can blame that on Emiru if he can find some provable at-fault and malicious defamation.
I truly do think this lawsuit was pretty lame, pretty pointless. This is something they could have responded to. And had you not being an idiot, it could have probably worked itself out eventually. Because for better or for worse, everyone moves on. Like, you can literally become EDP. Yes, EDP445, the cupcake lover. You can literally become him and still have fans. But I guess don't hate the player, hate the game, the rules, whatever the fuck the saying is. He still has fans. He still gets thousands of likes on Instagram. And he had a pretty big following on TikTok years after the whole cupcake and meeting with the minor stuff. So I think if Mizkif would have locked the fuck in and he would have...
For context, I have no idea who this cupcake guy is, but I'm not liking what I'm hearing. And it is funny, though, that he's comparing Mizkif to him. Not in any specific way. He's not saying Mizkif does that. It's just a funny comparison. That's all I'm saying.
Put out a good video talking about the situation. Now, his shitty stream that literally happened minutes after Emiru talked about her experience with Mizkif, had he chilled the fuck out, looked at the game plan and been like, okay, so I'm gonna say this, okay, maybe that should clear things up, it would have been a lot different. Let me say this one more time for the people in the back. I am not a lawyer. I'm just an idiot speculating. And that idiot speculating says, I don't think it's going to go Mizkif's way. I don't think it's going to work out for him. But I could be wrong, and maybe Emeru loses. I don't know. I'm not a fucking lawyer. I'm just reacting to this video, and I'm giving my opinion. He already lost 1 out of 2. Well,
then he's got to say, how is it untrue? Because if a statement is true, then, well, it can't be defamatory. And the last part is how.
I'm glad he said that, because that is actually true. The one defense against slander and libel that can and will win every time is the truth. The truth is the absolute peak bar of defense, where you can say anyone did anything, but if they come back and say, yeah, but that's not true, this is, and it's provable, then your case is just thrown out. They have to prove, not beyond a shadow of a doubt, it's not a criminal trial, beyond a certain reasonable legal assumption that the evidence has to weigh heavily that this is true.
How it harms him. So even if he's able to say, okay, here's a quote, this is not true, but if it has no harm, then it's not going to be something that's going to be actionable, right? So now he's got to jump through all of these hurdles, even with Emeru. So while he gets that W, he's got to put in work, him and his lawyers, to go through with each statement and say exactly how that harms him. And that's going to be a little bit of a challenge for him, and let's see how his lawyers and him come up with that response.
Honestly, not a lawyer, but I think his best option right now is to come in pitiful and say, look at what a loser I am. I had to go on demon time. I had to try and pull that to make myself look better. He has to come in looking like a fucking bum to prove harm. And I think that's actually his best move, is to just come in and say, look at what a sad, pitiful piece of shit I am. Which, they can't accuse him of lying in court, because that is true. He is a sad, pitiful piece of shit. And then everyone's going to look at him and go, yeah. And then he just has to point to how him being a sad, pitiful piece of shit is directly her fault. It's not going to be easy, but I think a good lawyer could do it.
The other thing here is that Asmon gets the win. It's finally ordered that defendant Hoyt's amended motion to dismiss count is granted. So, boom, Asmon gets the W. However, it's dismissed without prejudice, and that's signed July 10th by Robert Pittman, U.S. District Judge. So just in case you guys don't know, and this is very important for you guys to understand with any legal case, there's with prejudice and without prejudice. Mm-hmm. In the legal context, without prejudice really means without loss or waiver or any right or privileges. So in this case, that means that it is possible, theoretically, hypothetically, it is possible that Mizkif could refile later against asmongold.
So this is 100% correct. Obviously, the dude's a lawyer. He's going to be right about this kind of thing. What this means is that Mizkif can refile the claim later should more evidence of wrongdoing come out. But that's actually kind of a double-edged sword, because
while asmongold's case is dismissed, it is possible, if there were some new facts or something else came out, or there was some discovery that came out, it is possible that he could come back and try to swing against Asmon again.
Why would he do that? I mean, maybe legal mindset, we'll talk about it, but I'm just like, what is there to gain from this? Like, you would expect someone as big as Mizkif, you would expect him to know which battles to choose. Why do this? Like, I get it, asmongold is not everyone's cup of tea, that's completely fine. I'm not the biggest fan of him. I mean, truth be told, I feel indifferent. What is the point of suing him? But maybe I'm missing a chapter, maybe I'm missing context. I could kind of see why you would sue Emeru, but asmongold?
I don't think that's a wise choice. I don't think that's going to be a winning strategy, but
allegedly, air quotes.
Of course, we don't know yet. There may be more discovery where he'll try to find a fact and come against Asmon again. So let's turn over to my judgment here. So in judgment, asmongold has been completely cleared at this point, right? Until we get, until and unless there's more secret facts out there, there's something we don't know, asmongold's off the hook. And then
it is potential that he could refile and reopen this, but it would absolutely be a mistake if he doesn't have a mountain of new evidence that any judge could look at and go, okay, this last judge clearly did not have all the facts. This was clearly in the wrong. We need to reverse this. It is possible that can happen. I'm not saying it's not going to, but I'm just saying it's highly unlikely.
Mizkif now needs to specifically go through, do the work with his lawyers, and explain how each statement was defamatory, how it was false, and how it harms him. That's going to be a significant hurdle for Mizkif.
That sounds fucking boring and miserable to do. If I had to do that, I would just drop the lawsuit. I'd be like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. I don't even know how much money Mizkif has spent on this. We all know how expensive the legal system is.
Once again, you never know with cases. They can take wild and crazy turns. So I want to be conservative here in my assessment, saying, yes, it is possible that Mizkif could find some facts and come against asmongold again. It's possible he could prevail against Emiru. But at this point, his window for victory is narrowing. It's becoming...
He's 100% right here. He's been right the whole time for the most part. The guy is just... He's shooting in the dark. He knows something's out there. He knows there's a chance to hit it. But he is shooting in the dark with virtually no hope to hit. Now, he might get lucky and tag something, but the odds are not in his favor. The important part here is to specifically detail each defamatory statement, how it is false, and the most important, how it harms him. It needs to be not anything airy, not anything emotional, like, oh, my heart's broken, I'm so wounded, woe is me. No. He needs to cite specific lost sponsors, lost revenue. If he can prove lost revenue directly tied to this, that was not tied more so to him being a bad actor and the alleged things he did to Emiru, that's his win condition. But he's going to struggle with that because he's got to get the sponsors to essentially put up an affidavit saying, oh, we left because of what she said, not because of what he did, which is going to be an uphill struggle.
Harder and harder for Mizkif. And this is the point at which I would say to Mizkif, are you really committed to taking this all the way, or would a settlement really make you happy, bro? Would you be okay with some form of settlement, maybe an Emiru apology saying, hey, I framed this in a bad way, I shouldn't have said this way, maybe I should have framed this in a different way, right? Maybe it shouldn't have been my emotional truth, maybe I should have framed this in a more objective and neutral way, maybe something like that, a settlement, maybe a payment. Who knows?
If I gotta say neutral, I think that is the best thing that Mizkif could do. You know, you lost this battle. We all win some, we all lose some. As a non-lawyer guy, as just a guy with a microphone, a dude with an opinion, if you will, I would settle, try to figure something out, because if I don't, I'm going to lose everything. So yeah, I would just take the L and just settle. I mean,
so Sensitive is 100% right here. He's hitting the nail right on the head with this. It is in his best interest to settle outside of court 100% of the time, because there is always the chance that he goes to court and walks away with nothing. Or, worst case scenario, they go to court and then the evidence comes out in her favor, and now he has a lawsuit coming down on top of his head. Because if he goes and she is found to be not at fault, you bet your ass there is going to be a lawsuit coming back the other way. So his best bet is to try and settle amicably and reasonably. They don't even need to be there. Let the lawyers meet and decide it. If he shows up, it's just going to get worse. He does not have the wherewithal or the constitution of character to sit in a room quietly.
That's what common sense tells me, because what if you lose? You already lost one. What if you lose the other one, and then you're cooked, and you could have gotten something, but now you got nothing, and everyone thinks you're what people are calling you, and then some. Not a good day to be Mizkif. He lost, and he might possibly lose the Emiru lawsuit, but I guess time will tell. I'm not going to predict anything, because I predicted stuff, and I've been wrong, so I'm not going to predict stuff. I'm just here for the tea. Yeah, I think I've said everything I wanted to say. Yeah. Any updates, I'll talk about it here. Sansa's locking back in. With that said, see ya.
Okay, that ended quite quickly. Sorry, I was unprepared for how fast that ends. I do not pre-watch. Basically, what it came down to is this poor, sad individual with this derp face really needs to shut up, hide in a corner somewhere, and let his lawyers do the talking. It is in his best interest, 100%. Because if his lawyers can hash out a deal with Emiru, even if it's a small payment, it's going to save him a world of heartache in the long run. But I'm going to leave it there. I'm Rhino. Let me know what you all thought of the video. Tell me what you think is going to end up happening here in the long run down in the comments, because I'm curious to see what you guys think is going to be like the end play here. What's actually going to be the final verdict.